Hey everyone, this is going to be a little bit different video, definitely very nerdy, but also with some real life and synthetic examples. Atomic timeline and the terms and all the mindset and all that stuff is what I use to describe and help myself to deal with creating an optimal stage plan, finding flow, and fighting hesitation and binary execution. So hesitation is basically unnecessary pause when you're just unsure what to do next, or you're unsure if the previous action was finished successfully, things like that. Binary flow is when you create your stage plan out of hard defined components, and it's especially easy to see on a super new shooter when even such simple thing as like two-step draw is going to be executed as two actions, sequential actions, and not run in parallel. Like when they first going to be drawing and then stepping into position, or stepping into position and then drawing. So that's what I call binary execution, and that's definitely not very optimal thing to do, and this is what we wanted to avoid. So anyway, atomic timeline. For real life example, we're gonna take a look at my run on this stage. That was a pretty good stage win, 13% with 2 Charlies and 1 Delta, and a speed difference of more than 2 seconds. Basically, the idea of atomic timeline is twofold. First, you have different components of the stage, subatomic or critical sequence, then atoms, then molecules, bigger molecules, and stage or an organism. The first 3 targets shot and considered as one. This is one of the most basic ways to improve your transitions, is to make your transition equal your splits. But what does it really mean? It means that an array like this, when targets have equal presentation, equal difficulty, all alphas are open, I don't give a fuck about the fact that there's hard cover. It doesn't even matter that if I was doing cone of accuracy or I was not doing cone of accuracy, aka going full ham. So when I'm shooting them, they sound like pretty much engaging one target with 6 rounds. So when I was doing this stage, when I was shooting the stage, I considered that first part ham, then control. Then I go to another box, again ham, then control. So I actually did it on purpose. I wanted to have as much chaos as possible. And this is a perfect example why I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. I wanted to create chaos and just see how I can handle it. But in fact, that was a more optimal plan. Why? When you're just establishing your index, starting on paper, which does not require you to be very accurate, is beneficial. You can start shooting sooner, or you can start shooting at the same time, but your little misaccuracy because of the index is not going to affect you as much. Then when you already establish the cadence, your gun settled in the recoil. Yes, gun does settle in the hand after some amount of recoil impulses. You can go and do the Platerack. Then again, we're gonna be chaotic and unstable because we're coming into new position. Again, it's a good idea to start on paper because it's a bigger target, and then exit on steel. Yes, there's a risk exiting on steel, and this is one of the things that I wanted to try. And again, it doesn't matter because of the way how you should shoot Platerack efficiently, and we're going to talk about this soon in detail. One important thing to cover here is, as you can see, me starting the stage and shooting both paper array and Platerack, my feet don't move. So this was a little micro optimization that I've done in order to maximize the stability of the shooting platform. Now we're going to go to here, shoot this, and there was like some movement required in the foot, but more or less the body stayed still. Plateracks were 1-to-1. So these arrays are both equal, and the same principle is literally applied to them. All you need to do is establish at first good enough index to have an ability to shoot all 6 shots predictably. So it means that once you start shooting, the behavior of your shooting platform doesn't change. This requires a little bit waiting for your sights appearing where you want it to be, because sometimes of the reload, or of the movement, or of the regrip, or of the draw, it's going to be a little bit weird. And sometimes you draw and you expect the red dot to be here, and it's like here. You just need to remember this offset, not consciously, of course. You just grab this point, remember the vector subconsciously, put it there, And after that, it's all predictive. So on the draw and on the entry, it was all kind of like waiting, especially on the entry because I was stabilizing. And you can see a little bit of a delay here. Like super tiny, but in my mind, it felt really fucking slow. Obviously, you have to wait for the trailing foot to stop touching the ground that is outside of the shooting area, but I was also waiting for stabilization. So I think I shot when, let's see here, the first shot, and boom. Okay, so the first shot, heel is either touching the ground and now I'm sliding into it, or it's about to touch the ground. I think it's already touching the ground. So there was like a lot of travel for this right foot, and this whole time I was waiting for the sides to stabilize. After that, you just execute paper again as just one array. So executing this paper as one array is what I consider a molecule. It means that you consider this part as a single entity. And that's what really chunking is all about. It's you take some sequence of actions, and they're always the same, and then you combine them into one piece, and this way it's easier to manage it in your mind, in both memory and execution wise. When you consider something as a whole and you just go and do it, you just don't have hesitation, you don't have binary execution, you just do it, and it's easier to connect with other elements. So atoms here could be considered one target as an atom, 2 shots, or split as an atom. Like split is definitely an atom, right? And how to build a good molecule for this particular optimization, transitions equal splits. Instead of doing a molecule of some splits, some transitions, it's like split transition, right? You just consider it split, and you don't give a shit. So everything is the same. Everything is a pattern, super small pattern that just keeps repeating, and it's super easy. So at the end of the day, what we really want on every stage, let's say your stage is 24 rounds. You want your stage plan to be a single bigger molecule, which is going to talk about a little bit later. So it's a single bigger molecule that starts with a draw, and then it has 23 splits. And whatever you do with your non-shooting platform, with movement, all that shit, is whatever, magic. You just make every next target just appear in front of your shooting platform. So imagine you have a 24-round stage, usually hit factors around 8 or something, and imagine if you can actually do it as a draw and then 23 splits. How fast can you split at 10 yards? Let's say you can do 20 super reliably, all alphas. Let's say slow draw, 1.5. 120 divided by 6.1, hit factor 19. Like, if you can do that, you will be winning the stage 100%, right? But of course, it's not possible. Of course, you have delays, target availability, all that bullshit. And you probably need to have a reload somewhere there. So it's not going to be as easy, right? But theoretically, that's going to be your maximum for a stage of 24 rounds. You just want to come as close to this maximum as possible. This is what I want to have sooner or later. So there was like some movement on the draw, some movement between something. There were normal transitions and white transitions. Only one white transition. So I want the stage plan to be like this. And if we're doing complete new plan, it looks like this. We first move, then we draw, then we split, then transition, then split, transition, split, then we move to another, blah, blah, blah. So this is what we want to avoid. Anyway, continuing with my run on this stage. Plateracks. Platerack is an interesting beast. Here's a question for you. What plate do you miss the most? What plate gives you the most grief? For me, it's the third. It's always the fucking third plate. And this is why I think it happens. First plate, I know that I'm transitioning to it or I'm drawing to it. So it's going to be what I call glue, which is not atom or a molecule. It's just a shit between it. And you can optimize that too, but doesn't matter right now. So you draw to it or you transition to it, you hard focus, you get your hit. Good. Then you transition to the second plate. You're still in this hard focus mode. You hit it, you're good. Then third plate, now you have this super fresh memory of how the transition between first and second felt and how it was timed with the trigger. And now you have the same transition. So you're starting to notice the pattern, you're doing the same prep on the trigger. So you start seeing this micro pattern and you start repeating it. And this is where you can start missing. It's going to be, for me, either third or fourth plate. And the problem here really is just the understanding of what a plate in a Platerack is. You might feel that a Platerack is a sequence or two sequences running in parallel. The one is movement, horizontal, and another one is timing of your trigger. And theoretically it can work if the timing is always the same and the movement is perfect. But movement is never perfect, because even though you're transitioning on a very narrow angle, let's say at 10 yards, Platerack is going to be what, like something like this, you still will get some lean because of how you transition. We're not capable of transitioning perfectly horizontal. Add here the terrain, maybe something is on a slope. This is not going to work. Timing, another can of worms. There's no way you can like keep the same split exactly. So how much a miss of 100th of a second is going to cost you? Maybe quarter plate? I don't know. But it's going to happen sooner or later. So instead, I consider each plate its own molecule that consists of the following atoms. It's a transition to the plate, and that transition is running in parallel to two things. Recoil, so I go up and I sell, and this is running in parallel as I'm transitioning. And resetting the trigger and prepping it. And these things run in parallel. And this is like a very advanced topic of trigger manipulation, not just resetting the trigger and recoil in transition, but also prepping it. I only now start to see ability to do that. And this is something that Christian Saylor was talking about, that he always uses this technique. And some people are saying this is not a fast way to do it because you're writing the reset. No, prepping the trigger does not equal to writing the reset. When you're writing the reset, your range of motion is too narrow. It's too close to the actual activation and reset of the trigger, so you can get trigger freezes. You should go always a little bit beyond that range of motion to make sure you're safe, even more of that if you're shooting in a cold environment, shit like that. But it's also not slower because you essentially doing the same thing as some people call slapping the trigger, or what I call a seesaw, when you're just going woo, 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 woo. It's a continuous process, just a sinus function. It keeps going. But now, because your time resolution is so much higher, you can see every little element of what are you actually doing during that seesaw, that on the outside it will still look like seesaw, but inside of your head you will distinguish the different phases. You will go let go, reset, and then go to the wall, and ideally when the recoil settles and when the transition finally hits the target and you see that you are on target, you can break that trigger. So anyway, each plate is a molecule that has the following atoms. The first atom is going to the plate, and the second is letting the trigger break only when the dot is on the plate. So the second atom is a conditional. Is it there? I can break it. If it's not there, you need to wait for it to become there to finally allow yourself to break the trigger. Not hard on the second atom. The first atom is kind of hard. Three things. Recoil, it should be automatic because you're just holding the same way and it just happens. It's just whatever you observe. So it's not really an atom of you doing something. It's more like an atom of you just observing and understanding predictively what is going on. Resetting the trigger. Again, when you're shooting like on a high focus on Platerack, it's like here 12 or 15 yards. It's a little bit more conscious control, but really it should be pretty much just function running automatically. And the third one is transition. So you finished your shot, recoil happens, you look at the next plate, and you are focused on that next plate, and it's the only thing that matters. And everything is measured against that next plate. Recoil, transition, trigger prep, then trigger break. So it's going to be like in a glue, and then the same molecule 6 times, not 5 times, because you kind of start running this process of focusing on the plate, because transitioning to more or less where that plate is, the first plate, is glue. It's not hard. You just like, okay, wait here. Maybe you need to shift your stance a little bit. Maybe I shifted it here. I don't remember. But once you're there, you need to be like, okay, transition coming in, prepping the trigger. So the prep of the trigger is going to happen on the plate no matter what. So why not run just the same shit? Why modify it? So this was a high focus. You just shoot this. Each plate is its own molecule. A Platerack is considered a bigger molecule. So a bigger molecule is literally just a collection of molecules that are stacked together nicely, either doing the same thing or whatever. But you cannot consider them a single molecule because it's going to give you a wrong mindset. It's going to take some respect from these targets, and they must be treated with respect. So these 4 targets are probably the best example of molecule principle. It's easy to consider this array as something hard because there's like a no-shoot there's a big gap, then a small gap with a no-shoot and a big gap. But in reality, at any level, I would say you can shoot all these targets as one array, as long as you have this micro sequence of a dot in the Alpha Charlie and not on anything white, on anything no shoot, you should be fine really. So I think this is why I really had a good stage win on this. It's not really because of the Plateracks, although Plateracks are very important, but it's because of the final array. And we will have a video of another shooter shooting this, and you will see how binary execution can really happen on this final array. So for me, it looked like this. da 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 da. For me, in my head it was all just shoot everything da 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 da. But because I have these little micro sequences that are like go no go signals that are automatically regulated because they're already subconscious, the timing was different. So this is another important part is to this whole atomic timeline shit. You want to build the atoms, the lower elements, as solid as possible and make them completely subconscious, completely automatic. And after that, you just don't need to worry about this shit at all. Trigger press, recoil, go no go signal, depending on where dot is, it's just gonna happen. So all you need to do is just like, oh, there's like 4 targets, paint them with a brush and you're good. So to show you an example of another shooter shooting this, let's take a look at that. And now compare this to this. Much better, right? So what happened here is I think Orlando was not sure if he got all the plates. And when he moved to the paper, like the paper on the left and right are exactly the same, but the paper on the right are shot with noticeable huge pause and transitions. And here, just one stroke. So because the conscious interruption was running there, it broke his molecule of these 3 papers. And when he realized that these 3 papers are much easier to engage as just one molecule, then he had no problem engaging them here, right? But also notice that after he's shooting the plates and then the paper, he looks at the plates. This is like what tells me that he thought that it's not finished. So another quick note about Platerack. Platerack is a bigger molecule. That bigger molecule ends when you have no plates. This is like important go, no go signal. Don't even transition to the next thing. There must be a signal saying, we ran out of plates. We can go. So he shoots everything here. But notice this. Ta-ta, pause. Ta-ta, pause. Ta-ta. And the pause on a narrow transition through the no shoot and the big wide transition kind of felt the same. Maybe a little bit quicker. And I think maybe he started doing the transitions quicker. So he was learning the pattern. Basically, he was over verifying his stuff, not shooting predictively. And then his gun and the dot and everything going on was telling him, hey, we can actually go faster. Like, stop wasting time. If you have this, it means you're not shooting predictively. And you want to go everything as smooth cadence as possible. Yes, you might have mics. Fuck it. Don't care about it. That's the whole idea of like cone of accuracy and really shooting at the edge of your ability is you just cannot give a fuck about every little single possible mistake that you can make. It will not help you. If everything goes well, it will just increase your time. If something goes bad, it will still go bad exactly in the same spot, but you're also wasted time. So there's this one thing that's going to be important, and it's really hard, I guess, to say it with a straight face, but it's true. Slowing down will not make you more accurate. Seriously. It will not. I don't know, shoot a stage or a few arrays and then do a subjective slow motion. And when you saw you were dipping into Charlie's or you were having some little accuracy or touching your no shoots or your hardcover, you will have exactly the same thing. Like if you try to do exactly the same, just simulate the slow motion, you will have exactly the same accuracy issues that you had in a full speed. To correct accuracy issues, you need to correct your sequence. It's not enough to just slow down. Slowing down, so what's the difference in subjective slow motion and slowing down and taking and getting your hits? Slow down and get your hits is inserting no op blocks. They might help increase accuracy, but it's an extreme waste of time and nobody should ever do it. Like nobody ever, even a D-class shooter. Subjective slow motion is just taking your fine resolution of time and just like stretching it. So you have the same blocks, but now you're just doing it slower, like you're pretending you're editing a video in slow motion. And that's really what it is. Okay, so essentially what we have here on this stage is this. 3 boxes, and it's like as non-flow as possible. This was my stage plan. I optimized here my positioning for not moving my feet. Started 1, 2, 3, then I have a glue to the first plate, then this whole thing is a bigger molecule, but each plate is its own molecule, 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 molecule. Then after that, we have glue reload to this position. I put it as part of my stage plan, not knowing how many follow-ups I will have on steel. I could afford it because the run was big enough for me to actually go there. Exactly the same shit. You just repeat it here, and then you reload and run to the final position. Once you settle in the final position, you can execute this whole thing as a molecule. That's all it is. That's the atomic stage plan here. Okay, now let's take a look at some other examples, maybe a little bit more synthetic. So let's say we have a simple stage like this. You start in the middle in the shooting area, heels touching, and then you need to go left, you need to go right. So the red dots, the red highlights is like a super naive stage plan in terms of positioning. What a completely new shooter might do is they will go too deep. And the first optimization is change that from red to green highlighter and just go as deep as you only need to see the targets. Then from the left position, you will shoot 6, and from the right position, you will shoot 4. Simple, but very binary execution, right? And maybe you can have optimization that everybody should have always, it's like move and draw at the same time. But anyway, this is what it's going to look like. Blend, move, and draw together. Then you have split, transition, split, transition, split. After that split is finished, you start moving from position A to B. Then you have a split, transition, and split. That's it. So it's a newbie plan and almost maximum binary execution. The only way to maximize binary execution here would be doing movement first and then draw. Like there's nothing worse really than that. Now, if we have a little bit of a blended stage plan, this is what we can do. The only difference here is we combined together some splits and transitions on T2, T3, T4, T5 together with movement. So here we go and start shooting T1 on the move as always, and then T2, T3, we have transition, split, but the transition to T3 is what I mark here as the movement already starts. So you kind of like have a soft exit, you start shifting out of the position, and then you have a split on T3, and after that you have Y transition to T5, which you shoot while still moving, and the split is going on while you're still moving, but then there's this gap. This gap is when T4 is not available yet. So it's not available, and there's this gap. Then when it finally becomes available, we transition to it, finish our movement. So transition finishes exactly when the movement finishes, so it's like perfect. And then we have a split on. So this is what I call two-dimensional timeline. We took a timeline for a shooting platform, and then we have a timeline for a non-shooting platform. And we put these things on two different lines because it's so easy to run these things in parallel. If we just take a look at just some little nerdery shit, how long do individual things take? Split is the quickest, transition is a little bit slower, Y transition, then movement, then draw, then bigger movement. So the first movement is like S to A. So because it's such a short movement and it starts completely static, it's almost always can be considered a constant. So no matter what we do, almost every shooter with the same length of their legs is going to have the same shit. Now, what actually matters the most on the stage is like newbie plan, no blending, and then master plan with some blending. So we just took some of the blocks and put them inside of other blocks. So the newbie plan only has Y transition inside of A to B movement, and a master plan has 2 splits, Y transition, and transition inside of this AB movement. So splits matter more for newbie, and like draw matters more the transitions, but for master plan, it's a little bit better. It's not really important to like talk about this stuff, but this is just something that you might want to play with. Just create this pyramid of blocks of atoms or molecules on the stage that you see, and then start fucking with it, right? Just to consider what's going on. So improvement gaps. Now that we have this blended stage plan, more or less, what can we do here? We can notice 2 gaps. A draw versus step being a constant, but we can improve our draw in order to reduce this gap here. And the other one is waiting for availability of the final shooting array. What we can do is make our draw a little bit faster, just doing dry fire and starting to shoot more predictably, and start movement a little bit sooner. But we still have long transitions. And there's still a lot of binary execution here because these transitions are pretty simple. You don't have to make them any more longer than splits. Right now, we're like optimizing on the macro level, right? But once we can optimize on a more micro level, like make our transitions equal our splits, and this is like the same timeline where I just made the transition in time equal to splits, and you can see how much gaps there are now. And if we just push them to the left, we will see that we again have a new gap waiting for availability. So now, in order to minimize that, we need to start the soft exit way sooner. Like literally when we are shooting, when we just starting shoot T2, we can already start shifting. And this way we can get to this most optimal plan that I can come up with. Movement and draw take exactly the same time, movement from start position to the first availability. Then we just have 5 splits, and movement starts as soon as we basically can. So what you really need to do here is just look how fast you will lose availability of that target 3. And if it happens too quick and you need to exit quick, then maybe you need to step into the position, wait a little bit longer, and start T3 and then T2, T1, so like proper soft exit, right? In this case, I just do not consider this. So this is completely synthetic example. And as you can see now, this is how much we were able to optimize further just by improving our splits, making them equal transitions, using predictive shooting, having only one white transition that actually counts as a transition. That's pretty much it. Now, we can go to another synthetic example, which is this thing here. So imagine you have a stage like that. It's a very small box in which you're actually shooting. Your start position is on the right side, toes touching marks on the fault line outside of the shooting area. So you need to step into the shooting area. And let's say for some reason shooting T1, T2, the first array, the left array, T1, is better than shooting the last array, T7. I don't know, maybe there's an activator, maybe you just see it immediately and it's less awkward of a turn, whatever. So you might think that this is more or less no flow stage. You go to P1 and from there you shoot 6 targets, and then you go to P2 and you shoot 3 remaining targets. But actually this whole stage could be shot completely on the move. And for that, we need to change our molecules a little bit, change their ends, and we kind of can blend it into pretty much one single molecule, shooting everything on the move. So it's not even like a bigger molecule. We're just basically improving and optimizing the glue so much between the things that it all can be considered single molecule. So this is how I do it. This is like a little dry fire stage. It does actually feel faster to shoot it that way when targets are close enough. So on the step into the shooting area, we start with right foot. So right now we're going to be going right to left because we're actually going right to left here. So we start with the right foot, and the reason for that is that I want the left foot to kind of come into the position, and then I will start increasing the pressure on it. So while I'm increasing pressure, I might need a little bit more lean on T3. So increasing pressure on the foot changes my lean. So I go T1, T2, T3, and at this moment, we're doing our final stuff. Keeping the pressure on the left foot as maximum while reducing the pressure on the right foot, and then we swing the right foot. And we literally transition from T3 to T4, not using the turret, but by using the pivot on the left foot. That leg swing could be just like normal, or it could be a little bit wider and setting up us lower, preparing for the next step that's going to happen after this. From P1, P2, we're essentially shooting these things on the move because we're coming into the swing, we're putting the pressure on the right foot, and we start doing the cross step. So T4, T5, T6 are kind of shot on the move, cross step starts. While we're doing the cross step, T9 becomes available, and we continue cross step to normal step. So we're finishing, left foot goes in, then the right foot starts trailing. And while this is happening, we're shooting T8 and then T7 on a slight lean by increasing pressure on the right foot. If you remember how I said about the Platerack, you need to consider coming into a Platerack a glue, and then every plate its own molecule, where it's more important to have more molecules on the stage. In this case, it's more useful to have less molecules on the stage and literally take 3 possible molecules, change their glue, change their endings, and combine them into a single molecule. But it's only possible if you practice that glue. Things like cross steps, soft exit, soft entry, and super wild shit, transitioning by swinging the leg. So not just pivoting, but like you literally start an array standing on one foot, and then you start doing whatever, swings on with another leg in the air, and see how it affects your shooting platform, and see if you can actually use that swing in order to reorient your upper body and use it as a transition technique. Sounds weird, but it actually worked for me. That's another example how you can find the flow in even like super small confined place and just shoot everything kind of on the move instead of considering it 2 positions or setting up wide in the middle and trying to do like crazy lean. yeah, that's all I have for this video. I hope it wasn't too long. So this was, again, the principle of chunking from deep practice methods applied to stage planning with some little extra bullshit that I came up with. Naming things how you see fit is another part of chunking. Just you create your own terminology, and this way it's super easy to remember when you're doing stage plan. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. And this is type of bullshit that is going to be coming up in the book. Still working on it. 65,000 words written in the draft. Partially edited out of target 95,000. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.